It's a double nachas to be able to make two presentations in one evening to two people that are doing something very similar with extremely different tools, and to sort of acknowledge each one and his special tool. Rabbi Yehoshua Berman is being honored with Torah dissemination, and if a yeshiva can describe itself in the most succinct way, Torah dissemination is the word that would describe it. But I'd like to pause a moment on the Hebrew version of it. There's a pasuk in Mishlei. It says, Yafutzu ma'inosecha chutza. May your wellsprings spread out. And it is sort of a blessing on the person who is properly endowed, the wise person, the righteous person, that his wellsprings spread outwards. But I'd like to focus on the Hebrew word yafutzu in this context. The word to broaden is lehisrachev, lehispashet. When a person expands horizons, that's called to be mispashet or misrachev. Yafutzu is used in sort of a helter-skelter running away. Yafutza yivecha, it's something where people just run. In modern Hebrew, mapatz, nefetz, means explosive, which is sort of a very violent, random type of scattering. In other words, the word would possibly be scattering instead of spreading and disseminating. Why would that be the prime word to describe a process of teaching and outreach? I think the answer is because it's very different. The dissemination of Torah and the teaching it out is very different than any other type of discipline. For instance, when you have a salesman, so he has an object, the object is inanimate, and it's the salesman's job to produce a little spiel that will sell it. And the better he is, the better he sells. It's something that you have an idea. It's your job to stand and to propagate the idea and to convince people and so on. Torah is very different. Real Torah has a life of its own and has a force of its own. And it's like a wellspring where if you just unblock it, it rushes out. The word yafutzu is not meant in the sense helter-skelter, directionless. It's in the sense of an outburst and an outpouring that is driven by a life of its own, rather than you're shoving it, pushing it, spreading it. Real dissemination of Torah is Torah's chayim. It's living. It has life force. It has a tremendous drive and push to spread out from within itself. The person who is worthy of disseminating is somebody that the Torah he possesses is not inanimate, just kind of stored knowledge, but it's of the vital life force type of Torah. And he just needs to open his mouth and present it, and it takes on a life and a force of its own. I've known Yeshua for many, many years, from high school onwards. There was nothing that he knew or understood that was tepid, lifeless, kind of just sitting there. Everything that he knew, understood, and believed in was with a tremendous life force of its own, waiting to push and to drive. And on its own, it would take on a force of its own and engulf people. We've always kept a strong kesher, but the last few years I've seen him devoted to both a kollel, and he wanted Torah to be studied in a certain way, and his passion and the force with which he proclaimed the belief in the right way to learn impressed many people. And he's taken on causes that he feels are at the heart of what's right and good in the Jewish community. And he's passionate about it. It's not, the feeling is not that he's a salesman selling an inanimate product with passion, but the words that come out of his mouth, the feeling, the force, are the force and the feelings that those words ought to command on their own. I had the privilege of having him help me with something along in that field, and I owe him a tremendous debt of gratitude. I'd worked hard on something that I felt was very important, and he was the one that came and helped me in a way it would have been impossible without him. And I've seen his drive and commitment for Torah values in life that carries that passion. And therefore, it is my nachas and honor to present to him the recognition for that Torah and to wish him to continue your futza reines secha chutza. May you continue to be able to produce, to bring out the Torah of yours that's full of life and passion, and may it have the impact that they ought to have.
We can please call up Rabbi Merkin and Dr. Azram for the award presentation.
This is a picture of our late Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbi Anemer. A beautiful picture which captures, I think it was a quality that was his and a quality that was given over and transmitted to his Talmud, Rabbi Yehoshua. And this we're giving you, presented to Rabbi Yehoshua Berman, Torah Dissemination Award, Yeshiva of Greater Washington, Rabbi Gedalia, January 27, 2018, 12 Shvat 5778. When he'll say it, the words will have a lot more passion than I said it.
Shavua Tov to everybody. Rebbe, thank you so much for those beautiful words. Thank you to Rabbi Merkin, the entire yeshiva community for affording me this honor. About 20 years ago, I stood at the doorway of the old Beis Medrash, and I had a large stack of books, of Sfarim in my hands. It was my final moments of taking leave of the place in which I reached worlds that I didn't think I would ever reach. And as I stood at the threshold, literally taking leave of this beloved place for the final time as a student, I was overwhelmed. On the one hand, I knew where I was going, and my plans were to go very, very far. And I was filled with exhilaration. I was filled with excitement. On the other hand, the sadness, the pangs, the longing, the feeling and the knowledge that an era in my life was coming to a close was equally overwhelming. And my eyes welled with tears in saying goodbye by myself to this place that I loved so much. Even for a boy who by most people would be considered a pretty star student, not everything in life always goes as smoothly as we would want. There was a period of time where I was struggling with a personal problem. Alone. I had nobody. For one simple reason. I didn't feel like I could reach out to anybody. This problem was bothering me for quite some time. And it was getting progressively worse. There was one person that took note of what was going on with me. I was walking around the office area, and my Rebbe, Rabbi Anemer, said good morning to me. And I probably barely mumbled a reply. And he said, what's the matter? He said, your smile is your trademark. At that moment, I almost burst into tears. He quickly pulled me into his office. He saw what was about to happen. And I was able to open up to him. As far as I'm aware, Rabbi Anemer did not have formal training in psychotherapy or anything of the sort. Maybe I'm wrong. But what I can tell you is that within 3 minutes, he literally took a sad, broken boy. And please, I'll remind you, I'm not trying to make myself sound like I wasn't a good student. I was of the best. But at that time, I was a sad, broken boy. And within 3 minutes, he took a sad, broken boy and he blew back into me the life that I was missing. Literally. He took me, a broken vessel, and fixed me within 3 minutes. He knew exactly what to say to me, to reinstill inside of me the joy of life that was and is so natural to me. Rabbi Anemer was the epitome, the embodiment of malchus, of royalty, majesty. He commanded an aura of awe. Everybody, including myself, we were in awe. There was a mayra, a fear. And yet at the same time, I pushed myself. I went over to him. This was years before that first anecdote that I just related. Probably within the first month or two that I was in the yeshiva. A little 10th grade guy. And I waltzed over to the Rosh Yeshiva, to this paragon of Torah, a person who built citadels. And I said, Rebbe, could you please tell me a Dvar Torah that I can share with my family on Shabbos? Please try to imagine for a moment what that means. A freshman, lahavdil, going over to the president of the neurosurgery department and saying, would you mind giving me a few tips on how to write this paper? You just don't do that. But he brought me in. He brought me close. Rabbi Anemer had something about him that was very, very real. And he surrounded himself with people that were like that. I'll tell you another anecdote which is not flattering for me. There was one time during my 3 years in the yeshiva that I got into a fight. I don't remember if it was my fault or if it was the other two boys that were able to overpower me. Mind you, I have a black belt in karate, but they were two boys. And at that time, I wasn't really into it that much. Rabbi Teitelbaum saw what was going on, and he was very perturbed. He brought me into his office, and the only thing he did was give me a look. And you'll probably think that he gave me a very stern look, but it was anything but. It was a look that said, I care the world about you. What happened? This bothers me so much. That was it. And it fixed it. Rabbi Hyatt, during a particular shir, I once asked a question that I promise you would make almost any Rebbe in this room blush a lot. And probably almost any Rebbe in the world. He answered my question. There was something in the Gemara that, in all honesty, I didn't understand. I wasn't trying to make trouble. And he answered it. He said in the plain English what it meant. And I said, oops, I'm sorry. And he looks at me in front of the whole class and he says, why are you sorry? This is Torah. By the way, that class was not for me. It was a class for the 11th grade. I, for some reason, decided that I wanted to use my lunch hour to sit in on his class. And one time he even said, you're like Hillel. You like to peer in from the outside where you sometimes are not necessarily belonging. One time I went over to Rabbi Reingold and I asked him a very simple question in halacha. Rabbi Reingold, many of the people in this room know, is an absolute expert in halacha. Do you know what he did? He spent 15 minutes taking me from sefer to sefer, from book to book, showing me how to find the answer to my question. At one point, there was a book on a low shelf. So instead of bending down and looking for the book, he just simply sat down on the floor, and I sat down next to him, and he found the book, he opened it. These are all anecdotes that represent a theme. And the theme is that the Yeshiva High School of Greater Washington, the Yeshiva of Greater Washington, Tiferes Gedalia, is not simply an institution. It's a place that connects the people, it grows people, it brings people to where they can be. You know what the honor is for me to be able to stand here? It is truly my honor to be able to have an opportunity to express a drop in the ocean of the immense esteem and the deep, deep gratitude that I have for the yeshiva. And I literally mean a drop in the ocean. For anything good that I've accomplished in my life, and I'm not exaggerating, anything good that I have accomplished in my life is in large, large part due to the Yeshiva of Greater Washington. What I got and what I continue to get primarily through the kesher that I have with my Rebbe, which started then, and that, by the way, is a story in of itself. At that time, the high school boys weren't really associated so much with the Yeshiva Gedola, but being my type, I would go over to Rav Lopiansky also. I always like to go to the top. And he didn't say, you know, you have your own rebellion. And from there, a kesher, a connection began that continues to this day. So yes, on that day that I took leave of this place, I was overwhelmed with emotion. So once again, Rabbi Merkin, the entire yeshiva community, thank you so much for giving me the honor of being able to say thank you. A gute Woche.